The Elizabethan age reigned from 1558 to 1603. Queen Elizabeth I ascends the throne after a long legacy of turmoil, upheaval, and warfare, not just at the hands of her father, King Henry VIII, but as we'll learn, it's a family affair. Her reign ushered in a golden age and leaving its fingerprints on our society even today. And while Queen Elizabeth I's world may seem far removed from that of William Shakespeare's early life in Stratford-upon-Avon, her role would not only influence his work, but it plays an intricate part in his destiny. What we most associate Queen Elizabeth I with is those portraits we have of her, that iconic red hair and ornate outfits and the opaque makeup, and it all played a role. There's a language to that. She was trying to give us an idea of how she wanted to be perceived, and she did a great job at that. But she was so much more than her fashion and her person. Her rule, her reign, her life, it was all dictated by bravery and independence and upheaval and change, and most of that was at the hands of her own family. Queen Elizabeth I was the daughter of King Henry VIII and his second wife, Anne Boleyn. Anne Boleyn was the daughter of Sir Thomas Boleyn and Elizabeth Howard, and her maternal grandfather was the second Duke of Norfolk. Why is that important? Well, it means he was one of the most powerful men in the country, and her influence and family meant that her circle would collide with that of the royal families and ultimately seal her fate. Henry VIII was the second son of King Henry VII and Elizabeth of York, whose union brought an end to the War of the Roses. That's a dynastic civil war between the houses of Lancaster and York for the throne, and it lasted from 1455 to 1487. Then Henry Tudor returned from exile and defeated King Richard III at the Battle of Bosworth Field, and his marriage to Elizabeth of York was the final act at uniting the houses, legitimizing his claim to the throne and ushering in the Tudor period. His second son, King Henry VIII, would eventually take the throne, and his reign was marked not only by his 6 wives and his search for a male heir, but also by his break from the Catholic Church in order to divorce his wife, Catherine of Aragon, and marry Anne Boleyn. But this break from the church, it wasn't only felt in marital pursuits. Monastic life, monasteries that oversaw villages and farms were uprooted, leaving the King of England as the head of both church and state. I don't know if you've heard the rhyme, divorced, beheaded, and died, divorced, beheaded, survived, but it describes the fate of King Henry's. He was in search of a male heir, he was known to be paranoid, and Anne Boleyn was the second wife to King Henry VIII and mother to Elizabeth I. But she was ordered to be executed when Queen Elizabeth I was not even 3 years old. So she probably had little to no memory of her mother, but her fate would have played a major role in her upbringing. For the longest time, Queen Elizabeth I was considered illegitimate. Edward VI is the half-brother of Elizabeth I, son of Jane Seymour, and ends up ascending the throne when he's just 9 years old after Henry VIII dies. Unfortunately, he ends up dying very young and was never able to make his own decisions as king. I want to point this out because his legacy ends up being marked by riots, rebellions, economic problems, and a failed war in Scotland. Now, we do have evidence that King Edward VI, even though very young, was very religious. And one of the things that he did try and do was remove Mary, his half-sister, from the line of succession. But his advisors would not let him do that because he would have to denounce Elizabeth as well. See, his fear was that her being the daughter of Catherine of Aragon, the first wife of Henry VIII, that she would overturn all of the things that his father had done in breaking from the Catholic Church. It is important for us to talk about the religious turmoil during the Tudor period. It plays a huge role in English history and in the life of Shakespeare, and it's exactly what Queen Mary ends up doing. She establishes things called heresy laws, amongst many other things. And at one point, she even throws Queen Elizabeth I in the Tower of London. That's where her mother, Anne Boleyn, would have been before her execution. So when Queen Elizabeth does ascend the throne, she's coming into this time of great fear and turmoil and rebellion. So it is no wonder that one of her main legacies is espionage. With her coming on the scene after Queen Mary I as a Protestant queen, and knowing many people wanted to see Queen Mary of Scots on the throne instead of her, and see her beheaded, she was not going to have the same fate as her mother. She had a network of spies. Now, they would decode messages, intercept plots, and sometimes they'd even play double agent. You were not safe talking out against the monarchy. Now, Queen Elizabeth I knew that in order to keep the consistency of her reign as a woman, she could not marry, and she never did. And with her reign, we see the ushering in of the English Golden Age. We see a boost in art and theater and music. The most popular, arguably, being William Shakespeare.